morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, PRINCE2 Agile in 30 minutes. My name is Gemma Moorhead, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at ILX. We'll just give it a few moments before for others to join before we kick off. Great. Right, before I hand over to Gavin Treacy, ILX's Senior Training Consultant and Agile SME Lead, I just need to run through a few housekeeping bits. Firstly, you'll notice you're all on mute. Please can you remain on mute throughout the session. If you do have any questions, please put them into the chat box and we will answer them if they're technical during the session, but if they're for Q&A at the end. Secondly, this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link so you can watch it again and share with your colleagues. We also like to say give us a follow on social media. We're active on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. And finally, today's session is going to last about 45 minutes with time for a Q&A at the end. So before I hand over to Gavin, just going to quickly run through the agenda. So today we're going to take you through how easy PRINCE2 Agile is to learn. We're going to look at the basics of the framework without overcomplicating it and give you some quick, easy to use hints and tips. And as I said, we're going to finish with a Q&A afterwards. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to Gavin.
Morning all, happy Friday to you first of all and welcome. As Gemma said, my name is Gavin Treacy and I'm an ILX Training Consultant and also the Agile Subject Matter Expert Lead. I deliver a number of courses for ILX and we deliver these both virtually and in the classroom. I won't run through them all, but you can tell that PRINCE2 Agile is one of the subjects that I deliver, and Agile is actually something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I hope that comes through as I walk through this with you. If you do want to actually connect with me on LinkedIn, you are more than welcome, and there's a QR code for you to scan there that will take you through. One of the first things I want to do is just get a handle for the audience with this question: what do you know about Agile? So Gemma's now going to open a poll for you. And if you want to just answer that and let us know, what do you know about Agile? And I'll wait a second just to see. It's either I know nothing, I know a limited knowledge of Agile, I know a little. Okay, just helps me get a handle. I've used Agile approaches and know a lot. Good. Those people have put, I know, use Agile approaches and know a lot. You can help me during the webinar if you'd like. Okay. One of the things we do say when people join us for our courses is your level of knowledge. Well, that's okay. If you've used a subject before, that can obviously be an asset. If you haven't, do you know what? Sometimes joining a course and being a bit of a blank canvas, so to speak, actually can make it easier to learn. Okay, so thank you very much for completing that. So I want to start off with, first of all, to be able to look at PRINCE2 Agile. As you can tell, PRINCE2 Agile is two subjects. It's PRINCE2 Project Management and Agile. And I want to start off with just a little bit of a quick history of PRINCE2 and Agile. So first of all, both are actually born from a need for projects to be able to meet demands of building complex IT systems. At the time they were created, organizations, well, they didn't really have IT departments. Everything was actually being built from scratch, and waterfall was often the go-to project approach. Now, I don't want to ever be accused of waterfall bashing. Waterfall is a perfectly solid and good project approach, but it sometimes struggles when we meet something called VUCA. VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and this actually forms an important part of the PRINCE2 Agile learning. PRINCE2 itself was originally developed in the 1990s by the British government, and it actually became their de facto project management approach. Interesting fact, it was first called Prompt before being called PRINCE2. So what is PRINCE2? Well, PRINCE stands for Projects in a Controlled Environment. Agile began its journey through the 1980s and went down a similar path of trying to find an alternative to waterfall that wasn't working for complex IT systems that were having to be built by scratch. Remember, in the 80s and 90s, there was no off-the-shelf Microsoft 365 or similar. Other IT platforms are available. Okay, but Agile was created to help us deal with the challenges that VUCA brings around. So in 2001, a number of people who were actually creating alternative ways of working to waterfall got together and they created something called the Agile Manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And you can find this actually in the Agile Manifesto, and there's more information there with the 12 principles that come along with it. So whilst there's value in items on the right, we're not saying we ignore the items on the right. We value the items on the left more. It's about actually tailoring and blending the two together to the right level. Often people hear the word Agile and get concerned about, for instance, governance of their project. Absolutely understand that. Projects are always spending somebody else's money, and it's appropriate to have an appropriate audit trail and reporting. So we can have both, we just blend it together appropriately. And that's a big part of what PRINCE2 Agile is about. Now you'll notice it says working software. When Agile was first created, yes, it was for the IT industry. And I often hear the comment about Agile, which is, isn't Agile just for IT? These days, Agile is being used in a diverse range of industries. The first time I ever used Agile actually was for a marketing campaign, not IT related. I've seen it used in pharmaceuticals, anything that really involves that creativity, but where you're dealing with VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. But what we do say these days, we tend to refer to it as working solutions instead of just working software. Okay. Next poll. I'd like to get a handle on what do you know about PRINCE2? So Jem is kind of going to actually now load the next poll for you. So let's see what your thoughts are. And again, it's either I know nothing, I have a limited knowledge of PRINCE2, I know a little, I've previously completed PRINCE2 training and now know a lot. Okay, good to see a good mix again. Okay, good. So again, a question we get from people is, if I haven't completed PRINCE2 before, can I complete PRINCE2 Agile? Absolutely. As well as actually providing the course materials, we can also provide the blended approach of actually giving e-learning that allows you to be able to be fully prepared before coming into the classroom. But don't worry about not knowing about PRINCE2 before you come and learn about PRINCE2 Agile. So what is PRINCE2? As I mentioned, PRINCE2 is projects in a controlled environment, and it's a very structured project management methodology, and it's actually one of the most recognized in the world. Now, it does say structured. What I will say, it's also known as a flexible project management approach. As I go through today, you'll see that it does have an element of command and control, but that's because it comes from a background of governance and provides the governance. But it is also flexible, which is why it's ideal to dovetail with Agile. What PRINCE2 teaches is the fundamental skills required to become a project manager or to develop your skills in a project manager, as a project manager. And yes, first developed, as I mentioned, in 1996, and it has evolved and evolved. We're actually now on version PRINCE2 7. I'll say this, and I don't want to sound like a bit of a getting excited over project management information. PRINCE2 7 actually is one of the best updates they've ever done. They've really restructured it. It's more flexible, still giving the governance, but it's also much more people focused than ever before, which is again why it blends with Agile very nicely. If you'd like to know more about PRINCE2, I'll pop the QR code on the screen for you. Feel free to click into that, and that website will give you more information. Okay. So what is PRINCE2? PRINCE2 consists of 5 integrated elements. First of all, principles, of which there's 7 principles. The people element, 7 practices, and 7 processes and project context. What we're going to focus on today particular is the principles, practices and processes. And that's because trying to get all of PRINCE2 into 30 minutes is a case of challenge accepted. There's quite a lot. The reason I'm not integrating people, something we do cover in both the PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile courses, is because Agile picks a lot of that up. And again, I am very keen and passionate about Agile. What I like about Agile is it's incredibly people focused. It's focused on the people who will use the product using user-centric design, but it's also incredibly focused on the people within the organization and the project team. So I want to talk a little bit about PRINCE2 and its sort of culture, best way to describe it. It is known as a background of having governance, as I mentioned, and it can be seen sometimes as a command and control approach. What it gives is a clear hierarchy, okay? And it's about delegation from the business layer. So the business layer is the organization paying for the project. So if you work for an organization and they commission you to carry out a project, then it would be your organization, but it also can be an external organization. And they delegate tolerances to the project board. So say, for example, the project board could say, or let me rephrase that, the business layer could say, project board, you've got £1 million and 1 year to achieve X benefit. Okay. Now, what that means is the project board cannot exceed £1 million and 1 year and must provide that benefit as a minimum. We can choose to add contingency into that tolerance if need be, such as maybe a 10% on the budget or an extra month in the year, but that's a choice of the organization, the business layer. The project manager in PRINCE2 will then create a project plan, okay, and they will also create stage plans. And now the project manager will ask the board to authorize stage plans one at a time. And so, for example, a stage plan could be asking the board, can I please have £100,000? I need 2 months. And by the end of that, I will have made X amount of progress, certain outputs. The project manager now, once that's authorized by the project board, cannot exceed their stage tolerances. Again, contingencies or allowable variations can be given to the tolerances, for example, £100,000 plus 10%. But that's the decision of the project board. Now, the project manager, when they created their stage plan, the project manager will have liaised with whoever's going to do the work. And we refer to them as team manager or managers. So the project manager always collaborates with whoever the subject matter experts are. But once this stage has been now been approved, the project manager will authorize that the team manager or managers can now commence work on what we call work packages. Some of you might recognize the phrase work packages. If not, you might actually refer to it as what's called a statement of works, is often a very popular name. And it could be that a work package, for example, will have a maximum spend of, let's say, £20,000. Okay, they've got a maximum of 4 weeks to complete this. And accompanying it will also be something called a product description. And the product description would specify the quality tolerances that need to be achieved. And that would be in the product description. And that would specify performance of a product, measurements, and the quality could even be a font, for example, or even a color. Now the team manager cannot exceed the maximum tolerances for work packages and product descriptions. The team manager will keep the project manager informed of progress using something called a checkpoint report. Now, this is going to really matter when we get into Agile, or PRINCE2 Agile, should I say, about the influence that Agile will have on this. So team managers keeping the project manager informed of progress of the work packages and product descriptions. Meanwhile, the project manager is keeping the board informed of the progress of the stage using highlight reports. And again, when we get onto PRINCE2 Agile, that's going to have quite an influence on offering alternatives. Now, as a heads up, for everything that Agile wants to bring to PRINCE2, everything it's bringing is designed to help and aid the project. And the project manager works with the project board to create an environment that works for that particular project. And there are many, many choices that Agile will bring, and they're all designed to help. Now, the project board, if need be, will keep the organization informed of progress of the project with status reports. Okay. The frequency and the method is agreed for the project between the project manager. And there is one role in particular on the project board called the executive. Okay. And that's who the project manager will agree the approach with. Okay. So what happens if something's not going according to plan? Anyone who's worked in a project will know it's not if we have issues, it's how many we have and when we have them. So should it be that the team manager is unable to achieve their work package or product description tolerances, they now must raise an issue to the project manager. The project manager now looks at the description of the issue and they will make a decision. Can I fix this in my own state tolerances? If not, we're now in what we call an exception situation. And the project manager must now raise an exception report to the board. The board now look at the size, scale, everything to do with the state of the exception, and will decide if they can authorize that within their project tolerances. If they can't, and it means they're not going to achieve the benefits, it's not going to achieve the quality, if they're going to exceed that budget and time scale, the board are now raising an exception report up to the organization, the business layer. So it all stems from initially at the team manager and work package and product description stage, okay, at level, should I say. Now, let's just come back to issues. And have a think about this as PRINCE2 Agile comes in, because projects will have a lot of issues. It's their very nature. A big part of the job of a project is to find and fix issues before we hand over and go live. Issues can be to deal with dealing with change, but also, of course, called problems, or blockers is another name. We'll meet more of that as we actually meet more about the 7 practices of PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile. So I want to talk now about what does Agile bring to PRINCE2. So PRINCE2 7, I will mention as well, by the way, there is also another webinar that's available for you to access, which is all about just PRINCE2 on its own. It is PRINCE2 in 30 minutes, created by an excellent colleague of mine called Karen Swanston. If you did see it, I hope you enjoyed it. If not, you can actually search for it on the web, or if not, contact us and we can send you a link to it. So let's start looking at what Agile is. So Agile itself is a family of different ways of working. It's a very broad, flexible approach made up of many different frameworks, key behaviors, concept techniques, and ways of working. Agile can provide these frameworks, but the majority of them are actually what we call BAU, business as usual. Agile PM, Agile Project Management, is one of, and it's not many, Agile project management approaches. The majority of Agile ways of working are actually business as usual. Now, because they're business as usual, that actually makes them ideal to bring into a PRINCE2 project, creating the hybrid approach of PRINCE2 Agile. Okay. There isn't really the time in today to be able to go through all of the Agile ways of working, as you can imagine, because it's a big, big family. But what you're going to see as we go through the course is how different behaviors, techniques, and practices and concepts are integrated into PRINCE2 to create this hybrid approach in a way that supports the PRINCE2 project and the organization. So it's about blending the two together. PRINCE2 gives us that governance and control that I mentioned. And they are the ideal partners because PRINCE2 gives the governance and control. Agile brings along areas that will help support, very much around the delivery, but it will also support directing, managing, and the mindset of the project as well. So they do dovetail together very, very well. So what about VUCA? I mentioned this earlier. VUCA challenges align with Agile solutions in a fast-changing world. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Agile is able to help with each. It's about having vision and transparency to be able to deal with volatility, understand our end goal. We deal with that uncertainty by using user-centered design. We keep clarity through good, open communication and transparency. And to deal with ambiguity, it's about embracing change. What Agile says about change is that change is for the good. Change is about achieving the quality that our customer wants to be able to see, or the business wants to be able to achieve. Agile will bring on along, as you'll see as I go through the course, many different tools that will help support PRINCE2. Dashboards and canvases and project release maps. All of these enable us to have a vision of the project and help support the actual transparency of the project. So we'll be using dashboards, we'll be using various displays to make sure that information is visible and accessible. One of the reasons for this, one of the biggest causes of project failure is actually poor communication. Not knowing what information I need to access or where to find it. Agile wants to support this through ongoing transparency, but also collaborative practices. So workshops are also going to be a popular way of working. We'll meet more of these as we go through the various elements of PRINCE2. Now, the other thing that PRINCE2 has is tolerances: time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, risk, and sustainability. These are also known as project performance measures. And PRINCE2 would normally allow variances, all of these at those different levels: project level, stage level, and work package level, team manager level. Well, Agile's actually going to change the thinking on that. And it's going to do this using what we call sprint or time boxes. If you recognize the term sprint, you might know that from Scrum. But what about time box? It's essentially almost the same thing. You'll see sprint when using a Scrum approach, which is a business as usual approach, but we can also use time boxes as well. They were first called time boxes when they were created by Rapid Application Development back in the early 90s. And then Scrum was also introduced in the mid-90s, and that's where sprints come in. So both terms are actually very similar. These are going to be fixed. Can that be done? It's challenging, but yeah, it can certainly be done. What we're trying to do here with an agile way of working is that it's trying to reduce the number of events where projects have to overrun on time, budget, or don't achieve quality. Because if you don't achieve quality, you're going to struggle to achieve your benefits. So we will set a minimum level of quality. So both time and cost become fixed, and minimum criteria on quality. There will be allowable variations. They're set by the project board and delegated down to the different levels. You'll see something in here called must-haves. This is to do with Moscow prioritization. I'll come on to more of that in a moment. If any of you are recognizing something here, what you might see from something from Agile is what's known as the triple constraint or the iron triangle. What Agile wants to do is to be able to establish and fix time, cost, and quality. And that's been brought into PRINCE2 Agile, and it does work. So let's just talk a bit about Moscow. It's actually one of the simplest forms of prioritization. It's done collaboratively. It has to include a voice of the target audience. It has to include a voice of any subject matter expertise when collaborating and agreeing the priorities. Must-haves are non-negotiable. These are vital to the project. Without these, we're probably not going to achieve our minimum benefit. Should-haves are important, okay, and they should only ever be descoped as a last resort. If you did descope them, it should be temporary. And could haves are very desirable. I almost describe them as won't versus what, sorry, let me rephrase that. I almost describe could haves as want versus need. And then a won't have for now. So what's going to happen in PRINCE2 Agile project is that when we're dealing with issues, we have the option that should the must-haves require extra effort to achieve their quality, and we can apply the same to should-haves, we actually have the option to do what's called de-scope could-have requirements. Now, that doesn't mean to say we de-scope them forever. It can mean that we're not going to deliver them for now, and we can pick them up at a later point. It's almost like if you were making an ice cream, for example, a very particular flavor. We need to get the ice cream flavor absolutely perfect and the texture, but it's taking more effort than we anticipated. What we can do in this case is actually spend the extra effort on the ice cream. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop the sprinkles. We can pick up the sprinkles at a later point. What a good organization would do is try and rank must-haves and should-haves with zero tolerance, but you do have flexibility on shoulds if need be. We plan to deliver everything, but in the event there are issues or blockers with achieving must and shoulds, we can use could-haves as contingency. That can actually affect the amount of contingency that you would put into your project budget. Worth thinking about. Okay. PRINCE2 also comes with 7 principles. What these create is they give a foundation of our thinking and way of working. We want to make sure that we ensure continued business justification. That means that the project warrants further investment. Keep in mind, a project is always spending somebody else's money. We've got to make sure we make good use of other people's money and that we only continue to invest if it is the right thing to do. We need to make sure we learn from experience. If not, we're getting into the definition of insanity, doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So we will look to learn from experience. We'll learn from previous projects and learn from the project we're in. We want to make sure that everybody in the project understands their role, their responsibility, and their relationships inside and outside of the project, including with stakeholders. We want to make sure that we break the project into stages so that we can plan and review at regular intervals. Now, managed by exception, when I showed you that diagram of the business layer delegating to the project board's delegating to the project manager, and the project manager delegates to the team managers. Each is given a limit of authority, tolerances. Providing you stay within your limit of authority, everything's fine. You carry on and do as you should do. But if you can't achieve that level of authority, you have to raise an issue or exception. That's what managed by exception principle is. It's delegating authority and only having to go back to the authority level above if you're in some kind of difficulty or if we have issues. Focus on products is very much about achieving quality, because if we don't achieve quality, then we're not going to achieve the benefits. And also tailor to suit the project. No 2 projects are ever alike. They can be similar, but they're not the same. And each project, we must stop and think about how should we do things for this project. Let's just talk about what Agile brings. Agile will talk about making use of something called a minimum viable product. And this helps us understand as the product develops through regular feedback, should we continue to invest in this project? Now, at that point, if we do have an issue with the product, we can stop, and we can either stop the project or we could change something. You might hear the phrase pivot. But that regular feedback as the product grows enable us to see that the project either does or doesn't warrant further investment. Agile will make use of retrospectives built in to allow the team to discuss what's working well, what should we carry on doing, what could we do differently. And team members are allowed to talk about what they think and also what they feel as well. It is incredibly collaborative to ensure that team members are involved and are actually empowered to help change the project for the better. Agile will bring in a role that PRINCE2 wouldn't normally talk about, called the product owner. You might recognize that term from Scrum. The product owner supports user-centric design. They will represent the voice of the target audience through the project. Managed by stages. We can now start using shorter planning horizons to reduce risk, and this can be done using time boxes or sprints. What we're going to do with manage by exception, we want to try and reduce the number of issues that go to the project manager. It's not because the project manager can't handle them, but if too many decisions keep going up to the project manager, you're going to end up with delays. Project managers, as I'm sure you're aware, are often not always subject matter experts. They can't always deal with everything that comes to them. Project managers are often dealing with other projects. If we've got delays by putting too much through the project manager, what you can end up with is a bottleneck. There's another name for that. It's called a critical point of failure. And so the project manager will be involved when the team need them. But what we're going to do using Moscow, and we'll pick this up later, is we will actually allow team members to be subject matter experts and make decisions, but obviously with the right level of delegation and control. The project manager will be kept informed regularly of what the team are doing and any changes they have made within reason. Moscow enable us to focus on quality by ensuring the products that we do deliver achieve the right level of quality. And if need be, as I mentioned, I'm going to drop the sprinkles on the ice cream to get the ice cream flavor right. And we'll constantly be adjusting all of our ways of working. Agile is there to help find ways of working to Prince2 that are around the team dynamics, the people element, how we communicate, and how we engage with various stakeholders, such as the product owner and how that supports. So Prince2 has 7 practices. We're going to have a quick walk through each, talk about what the purpose is and how Agile will help support each of them. We'll start with the business case. So the business case immediately aligns with the principle of ensure continued business justification. All projects must have a mechanism to actually identify that investment should happen and should continue. That's the business case itself. What Prince2 would usually do is create a business case as what we call a management product. It's usually in the form of a document. It starts off as a mandate from the commissioning layer. Then we have an outline business case in the brief, and then we'll create a full business case. Absolutely fine that we should have that justification, and we need it in writing. It's a point of reference of why we're investing, who we're investing for, the rationale behind it, and for example, the timescales we have and risks that could actually affect the project. So it's right to have this in writing. But one of the things that Agile says is often if you've got a lengthy business case, 20, 30 pages, I'm sure some of you might have known bigger business cases. Problem is not everybody reads it. So Agile would bring along into the tailoring what we call a project canvas. Okay. Now the project canvas allows us, everybody in the project, to understand what our best, worst case and expected case scenarios, what's our minimum viable product, how incremental delivery or frequent delivery can actually help us achieve regular feedback and maybe benefits. And it allows us to have good, frequent, rapid validation of the project through prototyping. It's about aligning everybody to the project objectives, not just being top down and held at the senior level. Everybody in the project should know why they are there and what the project needs to achieve. And that's what a project canvas gives us. And the idea is that everything is in one page, easy to access, something that can be placed on a virtual wall or a physical wall. Everybody in the project now can see this and understand it. You can obviously make changes to the business case and project canvas, but that would have to go through an authorization process going from the project manager to the project level. In some cases, the project level may have to go back to the organization to seek that change. Next is the organization practice. And you can imagine that this aligns very well with the Prince2 principle of define roles, responsibilities, and relationships. It helps us understand the who's who within the project, the various layers and understand who we're working with. We're not going to walk through each of the roles because that, I can imagine, would take some time. But I want to show you something here with PRINCE2 is it has our various levels of project level, project manager level, and then I mentioned work package level, which is a team manager. But it stops there. Okay, it doesn't talk about who is in the organization structure. And this is where your subject matter experts sit. They shouldn't be the unseen heroes of the project, because without those subject matter experts, we're not going to build products. So that diagram now from PRINCE2, we expand on that a little when we bring Agile in. And now it's going to start talking about other roles that can come in. Now, in PRINCE2 Agile, there are many different ways of doing this. We could be using Scrum. We might just be using Agile teams and subject matter experts. But it's going to point out how roles such as product owners, team coaches, or an Agile coach, could be sometimes be another name, or a Scrum Master, can be supporting the various multiple teams working within that project. It's giving us more than just one option. We can develop the delivery teams themselves and how they work, but you'd also see we can develop the project team itself. This is about helping the project achieve project maturity. Maturity being about people aligned to a way of working, and in turn, that can help the organization achieve organizational maturity. Okay. Next is the plans practice. As you can imagine, all projects need plans, and this aligns very nicely with the manage by stages principle. Plans will tell us the how, the why, the where, the who, the how much, when, and what we're going to produce. So what makes Agile planning unique? Well, Agile is based on empiricism. That means we learn from what we do. PRINCE2 could be accused of being rationalism. It likes to know the products up front. PRINCE2 almost likes to say, well, tell me what you're going to build next. What's it going to look like, smell like, and taste like? What are the measurements? Agile says, well, we don't always know. Sometimes we've got to work out what doesn't work before we can work out what will work. So we've got to be able to get the feedback regularly into this. And this is also using just-in-time planning. So using empiricism and just-in-time planning allows us not to try and commit ourselves too far ahead to something that may need to change. Velocity is about us standing as well. Progress versus what we estimated. So if I'm going to break my project up into short planning horizons, and they can be, for example, sprints or time boxes. I'll put S for sprint for now. What we're not going to do is do all of the project plan up front. So we'll use backlogs to pull work from, but I'm not going to try and plan too far ahead in detail. And the reason is, if something changes here, I have to redo my plan. That can be time consuming, can be demotivating for people. It can also actually affect the confidence of any stakeholders. So what we'll do is we will learn from each horizon and feed that into the next. So if the work is taking more effort in that first sprint, we'll factor it into the next. And if something changes in that first sprint, we'll factor it into the next. And we can combine that inside a PRINCE2 stage, all giving us just-in-time planning and able to use collaborative planning to set goals that are achievable. We also want to try and give frequent and early delivery. Even though PRINCE2 is not designed to do so and doesn't have to, it's too often used not to deliver a solution until the very end of the project. The issue with that is that can be too late if there's something not quite right. It also supports the business case and continued business justification to be delivering something frequently. That doesn't have to be the final working solution. It can be an early minimum viable product, a prototype. It's something that could go into private beta, a closed group. It could go into public beta, a wider group, until eventually being launched. But we're learning from each, and that learning feeds back into what we're going to do next. That's empiricism. constant learning as we go. We're reducing the impact of time, cost, and quality not being achieved. And that takes me on to quality. I'm always incredibly keen about quality in projects. If we don't achieve quality of the product, if it doesn't do what it's supposed to, if it's a product that people either can't use or won't use, then we're not going to achieve our benefits. Products always have snags or issues, bugs or defects. We try and actually eradicate as many as possible during the project. If we go live with this solution, but we haven't achieved quality, it's either a product that people can't use or won't use, or there's going to be a lot of unanticipated operational costs. It's just kicking the can down the road if we're not careful and having to deal with those problems later. The problem is with that is by the time you get to those problems, they can actually be bigger and more expensive to deal. So let's deal with them in the project. And we do so in PRINCE2 by creating management products that will enable us to describe and capture that quality is being achieved. Agile is absolutely 100% on board with this. But what Agile will also bring is something called definition of ready and definition of done. So when it's working in those short time frames of sprints, a definition of done has to be established. And this will often, first of all, sit around acceptance criteria, and it will actually define the acceptance needs. But it will also get that bit further. It's all very well that a document has achieved quality, it's passed its test. Does that do what it's supposed to do? Yes, it does, project manager. Well, the thing the project manager should ask, of course, is the show me test. You don't necessarily have to show me it works, but show me the supporting documentation. What about any necessary handover? Has that taken place? When I often think of definition of done, I'll often think of it as that additional governance and documentation that's there to support that the quality of the product has been achieved. If we achieve the definition of done, if we do so within time and cost, we're also achieving quality and we're keeping the project within tolerances, avoiding overspend. A project, or let me rephrase that, a sprint should not start without a definition of ready. To have a definition of ready, you must have a definition of done. And this stops us starting sprints or time boxes that were not actually ready to start. It means that everybody is on board with the goal and the objectives. Definition of done and definition of ready are a collaborative event in agile ways of working, making sure that our subject matter experts, or at least a voice of them, is represented when planning for these. So the quality aspect in tailoring, we will make sure that expectations are fully understood before we start work on something. What we're going to use instead of product descriptions is backlogs. Product backlogs will give us a to-do list of requirements, or you may even use the term user story. It will have epics or high-level requirements as they're known, one and the same thing, by the way. An epic and a high-level requirement, you can think of it as the same thing. A low-level requirement or a user story is the term that's sometimes used. They will replace product descriptions. Can't get rid of the product descriptions entirely. We still use them, but they're actually met through product backlogs. Definitions of done and ready give us a baseline to achieve, to work to. And quality checks happen regularly. In fact, what Agile says is you must build and test as you go. If you've built something, the answer cannot be, I think it'll work. The answer has to be either I know it works, here's the actual evidence, or it doesn't work and we need to do it again. So that brings us on to risks. What if? Remember the difference between a risk and an issue. A risk is something that may happen, might happen, could happen. So equally, may happen, may not happen, might not happen, could not happen. Risks are always future tense, whereas an issue is something that is happening or has happened. PRINCE2 will create a risk management approach to make sure that everybody in the project understands our approach to risk. It's almost like a risk strategy, maybe the other name. Well, that's about very much around the product. What Agile wants to also do is discuss risks to the project approach. And it creates something called, it's a brilliant name, this, the Agileometer. Okay, yeah, when you read it, it's like, how do you pronounce it? Agileometer. Okay, this is a collaborative event that's going to involve the project manager and other stakeholders, including the project board and team members, to ask the question, are we in a position to go ahead with this project? Are we in a position to use agile approaches? And each area is discussed and scored. Now, it doesn't mean to say that we don't go ahead, but what it can actually do is identify that additional coaching and training is needed. You review this regularly through the project. This support lessons learned. It's helping the projects achieve maturity, which will support future projects and the organization. So keep revisiting this through the project to look to see if there's development areas. To maybe be said as well that there are actually coach roles available to support the PRINCE2 project. The issues practice. So what if we do have issues? So issues are often known as blockers, requests for change, problems, concerns. PRINCE2 has a very formal approach. Do you remember I said earlier on when I walked through that hierarchy, if the team manager can't solve something, they have to go up to the project manager. If the project manager can't solve it, they're going up to the board. That can cause delays. So what we're going to do is, first of all, embrace change. Change in Agile is normal. The reason we're embracing change is to achieve quality so that the product does what it's supposed to do. Moscow prioritization to enable reprioritization and trading or swapping. Trading or swapping, which can be, it's a variation of the term de-scoping. I'll come on to this in a moment. Enables us to achieve and maintain the quality that we're handing over a product that does what it's supposed to do, so we achieve our benefit. We're going to blend the two together. We're going to have PRINCE2 will still define quality. Agile know they will achieve it through responsiveness by embracing change and making sure we actually produce a product that's going to be accepted. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use that Moscow again. And what will happen is must have requirements sit with the project board. You'll also sit below them, and there's flexibility how we do this, but should have requirements. Well, they can go either with the project manager or with the board. But what we're going to do is give could haves to the team level, to the subject matter experts. Now, when you start work on that backlog, you will generally in a sprint or time box start work on the must-haves first. If any of those must-have requirements are requiring extra effort to get them right, then we're going to take something of equal value from the could-haves and de-scope or trade or swap. We can apply this prioritization at project level, sprint or time box level, or stage level, and we can apply it with actually at that sprint or time box. So just to say that again, it can be at project level for the project tolerances, it can be at stage level, and we can also apply it at sprint or time box level. Something we spend a lot more time talking about in the course because there's a lot there to discuss, but to walk through all of Moscow now, it's going to be quite time consuming, but do feel free to pop questions at the end if you have questions about how that works and you'd like to know a little bit more. So if a project has a plan, what progress are we making? So the purpose of progress, again, all of the practices of PRINCE2. It's worth mentioning now that we don't drop any of the 7 principles, any of the 7 practices, or any of the 7 processes. And the purpose of the progress practice is to establish mechanisms to monitor and compare achievements. PRINCE2 uses a lot of reports to do so. So what's Agile going to bring? It wants to make use of transparency in things such as information radiators. Rather than waiting for the next report to be published, it's pulled rather than pushed. That means people can see in a live manner how the project is performing and progressing. And that information can be made accessible to all levels of the project, not just project manager, but also project board. So that brings us to the end of the processes, to the end of the practices. I want to talk a little bit about what does PRINCE2 bring to the processes. If we look at PRINCE2 is a journey. enabling us to make our way through the stages. These are the stages at the top. These are the levels I mentioned earlier on. PB, project board, PM, project manager, and delivery team manager level. Each one of the processes enables us, but also going through with reviews to have certain activities in each stage, review at the end of each before we move into the next. We've got number one, starting up a project, where we check that the project should go ahead, it has feasibility. Directing a project is where the project board will oversee the project and make high-level decisions. The initiation stage, in initiating a project, is where we will now plan the project. So you can see 3 of the 7 processes. Stage boundaries is where the project manager will go to the board, prevent a review of what we've done, and present what we want to do next. And we're going to use stage boundaries that are also known as stage gates. You can call them milestone reviews if you want to, or go-no-goes, to have control of the project before further investment at each stage goes ahead. We then move into, and you can see now, 4 of the processes, where we get into delivery stages, subsequent stages. And controlling a stage, number 5, is where the project manager will ensure that their stage tolerances are being achieved. And they will delegate work to number 6, managing product delivery, and that's where the team manager sits. And their job is to achieve work package and product description, or acceptance criteria or definition of done. Then we'll go through another stage boundary each time. Each time the project manager wants to go from one stage to the next, they submit to the board how that stage has performed and the plan of the next stage. Now, what's important is the project manager in PRINCE2 can only ever get the next stage approved. I can't be, for example, here and have all stages approved. That's not allowed. It can only be the next stage, and that's to reduce risk of actually not achieving project tolerances. And the last process is called closing a project process. So we'd have another controlling a stage, project manager, another managing product delivery. But what's also going to happen in here is throughout that final stage, the project manager will be working with the board and the executive to close the project. Just going to walk through with you now what Agile brings to each of those. So Agile will encourage the use of collaborative methods to involve people during starting up a project, to get the right questions answered, and to make sure we can clearly define what the project is about. It's about creating a sense of team cohesion and buy-in. In directing a project, once again, we're going to make sure that we use project board members, okay, to actually understand the project, and their project board members are going to use the Agileometer to see if there are any risks to the Agile way of working. We're not looking at the project from just a product perspective, we're looking at it from a project environment. We want to reduce the risk of project failure, and the Agileometer will help with that. During the initiating a project, where we now plan, very much again about collaborative planning, planning for iterative deployment, planning and releases to be frequent. We want to also align the project with Agile ways of working. And so now again, it's about using workshops to make sure that the project has everybody involved. They understand the what, the why, the when, the who, and then probably everyone's aligned with the vision. In stage boundaries, now it's not just about getting stage approval. The difference is Agile will be encouraging frequent releases and using the Agile incremental approach. We're constantly revisiting the backlog and using that just-in-time planning, but we'll also use collaborative workshops to make sure that for the next stage or the next horizon, there's a 360-degree understanding by everybody within the project team. It's all about collaborative practices again. In the managing product delivery, this is again where your team manager or delivery team sit. To understand progress and for the team to organize themselves every day, they'll make use of daily stand-ups, sometimes called daily scrums. And that's where what we're trying to do here is allow team members and team managers to solve issues themselves instead of constantly coming up to the project manager. You might not have a team manager here. Instead, you might create a self-managing team and a product owner. You could be using Scrum and dropping that in if need be. And then the controlling a stage. So this is the project manager's world. So in controlling a stage, rather than rely on checkpoint reports coming from team managers, the project manager instead will pull information from information radiators, such as you can use anything from Microsoft Project, whiteboards, Excel spreadsheets, allows them to see progress rather than waiting for the next report. Weekly reports, monthly reports, quarterly reports can still be integrated to manage governance. But in terms of progress, well, if I wanted to know today's news, I would read today's newspaper, not last week's. And that's what daily stand-ups allow us to do, to get good, frequent updates. And so do actually pulling information from information radiators. And retrospective, rather than just recording a lesson learned in a log, it's a collaborative workshop to talk about what's going well and what we could do differently throughout the next stage of the project. And last of all, the closing a project process. If we've done it properly, if we've been using good frequent releases, ideally, this should now become a formality. It should just be the last piece of the jigsaw. You don't always with a release actually have to release something live. It could simply be we get it just signed off at that time. So I'd like to think that even if we're not releasing into the public or into closed groups or user acceptance testing or focus groups, that we have at least had sign off from the stakeholder. And this would just mean the last sign off or the last release. We'd also make use of a workshop to make sure that we transition well into operational use, identify lessons learned. We need to make sure that any responsibilities for post-project and operational use are fully understood, fully discussed and agreed before we get there. And that's where we'd also, PRINCE2 Agile now puts a significant focus onto the post-project, the operational BAU context, and making sure that we have discussed before project closure and identified the activities for change management, handover, knowledge transfer, and then also if we need to track the benefits through data points, for example, or perhaps through surveys, that this is all agreed and planned in advance. It's essential that post-project activities are agreed before we close. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about is how the training and certificate. It's not easy to say this. Can I do it again? Get my teeth back in. Training and certification. There you go. Did it. Right. PRINCE2 Agile and Practitioner training is available from ILX, and it's the version 2. And I'll say this, that I thought PRINCE2 7 was an excellent update. I've been delivering PRINCE2 Agile for quite some time. I genuinely think this is absolutely superb. What people sort of actually brought out, it has to be one of the best updates they've done. Better than PRINCE2 7, actually. I know it's a bit weird that I get excited about a qualification, but it is what I do for a living. But genuinely, it is absolutely superb. I have really only covered the skimmed the surface of what Agile can actually bring to PRINCE2. Your study options, you can do it through e-learning, self-paced. We do virtual classrooms. We do on-site classrooms as well, various places around the UK or at your own location, or we can do a blend. Now, it does come with exams. I know at that point people get a bit daunted by exams. Don't, honestly don't, okay? They're passable. Will they stretch and challenge? Well, learning should stretch and challenge. Otherwise, what's the point? But the foundation exam, it's 40 questions in just 60 minutes. The pass mark is 60%. Very, very doable. And we help you prepare for that. If you want to go to the next step, there's the practitioner exam. That's 50 questions, 2.5 hours, and the pass mark is 60%. It's based on a scenario. It's also open book. You can use the textbook that's provided. I'll say this, if you can pass foundation, you can pass practitioner. What will help you within our classrooms is how to actually study and approach the practitioner exam and the techniques you need to use. To be able to take practitioner, there are prerequisites. You must have PRINCE2 Agile either version 2 or version 1 beforehand. So that is a bit more than 30 minutes. It's a lot to cover in all fairness. I tried my best. You can take your exams online virtually. You don't need to download any software. It's very simple to do. Just one camera, no second camera on you, or you can do paper-based exams. They're available as well. So takes a deep breath and says, Gemma, would you mind opening the next poll, please? So what are your next steps from today? What do you think you would do? Okay. Good. We'd certainly like to help you with your learning and certainly help you become more confident about both project management and PRINCE2, and very much how Agile will help and support your organization. The last thing for me to say is, do you have any questions?
Thanks, Gavin. That was brilliant. So yeah, so we've got one question. Well, actually, just people saying thank you, and also one person commenting how it's changed a lot since the old version.
Huge change.
Yeah. So we don't share slides, but what we will be sharing tomorrow is a link, is the webinar recording, and where obviously Gavin's been annotating. I think you get a lot more value out of rewatching Gavin annotated slides than just getting the presentation. So I hope that's okay for the person who's requested that. Another thank you. So I'm not sure if we're going to have any questions.
Do feel free to ask me questions. It's what I'm here for.
Yeah, another thank you. I think there was a lot to take in, I reckon, Gavin, on that one, because as I said, it was a really informative presentation. So thank you so much for that. If anyone does think of questions later today or next week or whenever, please do get in touch with your relationship managers at ILX, because they're more than happy to help as well. Yeah, I think we could probably maybe leave it there. So as I said, there'll be a follow-up email going out tomorrow with the recording. You can find out more about PRINCE2 Agile on our website. And I think all that's left to say is thank you so much and have a great weekend. And Gavin, anything else just to add before we close up?
Thanks for joining us today. Apologies, it's a bit more than 30 minutes, but there's a lot to squeeze in, as you can imagine. And I hope that we'll see you on a course in the future. Have a fantastic weekend.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.